Hello, everybody. I'm Kipp Snow, the director of the Transportation Distribution Logistics Institute at the Community College of Baltimore County.
Hey, everybody. Mike Singer, community manager, Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers. Welcome to the Shipwatchers podcast, episode 30. Just two guys talking ship.
I already started working on the T-shirt and the logo.
For real?
Yep, 100%. We'll see how it works out, though.
That's hilarious.
We're on starting to get towards the holiday season here. The college is closed up for the holiday, so
nice.
We're going to do a little bit of do all the holiday stuff, do all the honey-do list stuff. So that's what's on tap here.
Yeah, we had our small immediate family Christmas yesterday because our son works for WBAL and Christmas is on a Wednesday and he's not getting the day off on a Wednesday in the middle of the week.
Gotcha.
So that was cool.
All right.
Big Ravens win yesterday, so I'm happy about that. Well,
that was nice to watch that, especially the Steelers loss.
Yeah. So let's talk about the port metrics that we track every week. So the last 5 weeks have been 3,500. So it's average containers, average truck transactions per day. So this isn't 3,500 per week. It's 3,500 per day for this whole week, for each one of these weeks. So 3,500 5 weeks ago, then 3,300, then 3,100, then 2 weeks ago, 3,478 with 2 days over 3,600.
Wow.
So 3,600 transactions a day for 2 days a couple of weeks ago. And then just this past week that just ended, yesterday, the day before, average 3,390. So things are,
pretty steady.
Staying steady.
Yep.
So we're doing some. We talked about last week on the podcast that we're doing some dredging.
Yes.
Right, and we kind of talked about that and went over that. So they're doing. It's kind of funny if you watch the live cam of the port, the streaming of the port. So they're doing just about everything that they can do, except for the main section right in front of the camera, which is kind of funny. So they're doing down here by the Key Bridge and all the way to Fort McHenry.
Okay.
And then they're doing the Curtis Bay Channel because before the big container ships came in, that was really the main reason for. Well, that's not true because Consul also operates 50-foot vessels,
Sure.
exporting coal. So down into Curtis Bay, but then around the corner under Pennington Avenue and 695 down to the Coast Guard yard and around the corner into Arundel Cove where they store some other Coast Guard boats. And I can't remember the last time that's been done.
Okay.
So that's really cool. And then if you're looking at the camera shot, off to the right is Fort Smallwood Park. And that's where the Craig Hill Channel starts to take you down to the Bay Bridge. And they're doing that.
Okay.
But the one that's right in front, the Brewerton Channel, they're not doing that. So
okay.
Every winter they choose to do some subsection or sometimes it's every other winter. Depends.
So this is more of the maintenance process. This is.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yes, just regular maintenance because you can imagine just just going down another 5 because there's a whole group of DMCFs, dredge material containment facilities, right?
Correct.
We have 2 here in the harbor, 2 small ones here, and relatively small ones here in the harbor, and then there are some that are a good ways down the bay. And so they only the dredge that's very local goes to those 2 facilities that are close by. Even once you get past like Trade Point, everything has to go like an hour south of the bridge where the next facility is. And I think because, they want to be able to put the local dredge spoil in the local place.
Correct.
And if they put too much there, they'll just fill up really quickly because they're, like I said, they're relatively small. But we do have some, let me see. We do have some pictures here.
Oh, great.
So our friend from Dead Rise Marine Photography, Mark, takes some incredible photographs. And he's been busy with some other stuff. So I have to be honest, we are the people in the Shipwatchers group and maybe on some of his other socials are quite spoiled of him taking his, and he doesn't have a really big boat, but he goes everywhere in all kind of weather, and he's out there like first thing in the morning and taking photographs. And so he's been really busy with some other stuff, and so we really missed some of his contributions.
Sure.
But
so a lot of the most all of the pictures that come out of there are just amazing.
Yeah, could you go ahead and read that stuff that I've prepared?
So so what you see here is yesterday morning, the tugboat Diamond Coast that you see here, and the bulk carrier, what is that? Vebeki?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Vebeki Iris departed the port.
Yeah, so this isn't the Diamond Coast or whatever, because I don't have that because I'm showing it. But this is, I think this is a crew boat that belongs to the company that that won the contract for the dredging. Okay. And so this is the actual dredge. This big thing to the left here, it's pretty humongous. Previously, we used Cashman dredging, and they've been doing the winter dredging here for years, but they missed the contract because this company underbid them, and they brought in this monster dredging unit. This thing's pretty huge, pretty impressive. So I think this was a crew boat, because I think they're out there dredging 24 hours a day.
Okay.
And so I think. So I mean, I've seen them dredge overnight, so I would only assume they're doing 3 shifts. They may only be doing 2.
Several crews that rotate out.
Right, and they got to bring them out. And they typically bring them out. Well, I don't. But the one thing I like about Dead Rise Marine Photography about his work is, so you've got this great close-up of this crew boat and the actual dredge itself, and there's the skyline of the Baltimore harbor of Baltimore in the background. He just has this great way of taking these
that knack to be able to see what's in the background.
Right, these composite photographs. So
there's your bulk carrier right there.
Right, exactly. I don't see the tug. I don't think this is the tug that he mentioned. So maybe it's in the final shot.
Okay.
So I think this is a barge here. This Crown Point, I think that's a barge. This is the dredge here. All this.
Yep. And you could see the bucket
Yeah.
in action.
Yeah, and that's one thing that Mark is great at is catching the actual action as it happens. And then
And so what
Becky
they're
Iris would
go
go
ahead.
ahead. You
Yeah.
go.
No, what I was going to say is what they're doing here is they're dropping the bucket down into the water, scooping up the dredge material off of the bottom,
Mhm.
bringing it up, and so you see water discharge from dripping out from flowing over the bucket, and they'll
Mhm.
discharge it into that into the barge that's right there that the tug
Mhm.
is holding on to.
Right, and then they're constantly running barges over to the Cox Creek DMCF, which is the one that's just outside the Key Bridge port side. If you're coming into port,
And the Anne Arundel County side of the
right,
yeah.
right, and I think the Becky Iris was in temporary anchorage,
Hmm.
right? So, and here's a really cool thing. I just picked up on this. Let me see if I can kind of move us around here. Let's zoom in here. So you don't think about which directions things face and how you're looking, and you might be looking from a different direction. So this is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right here, you can see the back of the Domino Sugar sign that you typically see the front of when maybe you watch the news and they've got that harbor shot
Sure.
that they show at night. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah, and this dredge is a monster. So this is another one of the dredge tugs, the Karen C. And C stands for the name of the company which does the dredging, but right now I can't remember what it is. But these are the spuds that basically drop down and lock the dredge into position, and you'll notice they're on an angle. So supposedly they can walk. So these spuds can lift up and walk the dredge
Really?
without having to, kind of fully lift them up, because it's typically you fully lift them up, you latch them into position so that they can't fall. The
Interesting.
tug moves them, they unhook, they drop them back down. So this thing can basically walk itself across the bottom, which is something I've never heard of before. So when some of the camera chatters were going into those details, and wow, I was fascinated.
That is.
So here's another one of Dead Rise Marine Photography's, signature shots. Here's this great close up of the action and the colors, and look what's in the background
Mm-hmm.
again. The whole skyline of Baltimore. I just love that because nobody else does that. Nobody else does that, out here in the port, showing, action shots of the port working, with, the reason behind it, the city, right? The reason behind why all this stuff is happening, because of the city behind it.
Yep.
I think that's such a cool.
Real quick, the C is for Curtin Marine Corporation.
Thank you.
Yeah, look that up real quick.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those really are some neat images. I really like the way that the colors are in the background and how it really, he's telling a story. It's not just grabbing a picture or grabbing a shot. There's a full story that's there.
And all his photographs are like this.
Yeah.
There's a great
these images were captured as they transited through the Fort McHenry Channel and the Brewerton Angle and the Brewerton Channel. So if you'd like to look more at Mark's work or purchase some of these fantastic videos for yourself, check out deadrisemarinephoto.com. So
cool.
Pretty neat images there.
Yep. Yeah. Remember back in the day when we didn't know how to share images during the podcast, and it was just like it was like a dream of mine. Gosh, one day we should be able to,
It only took 30 episodes for us to figure it all out.
Was it really 30?
No.
I think it was like 5 or 10, maybe.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, look at this button down here that says share. Oh, look at that. It was there the whole time. That's what happens when you record these things in the morning.
Right. Any Dali updates?
Yeah, so I do find it interesting that the sister ships keep coming in, right? And if we go back to when we talked, when we played some of Sal's podcasts and we went into the details of the components and how they were saying basically all these ships were basically wired the same, and so I guess AI isn't going to help me get this answered.
Right.
But I would love to have this question answered because I keep asking it. Do we know for a fact that all these ships are wired the same? Has anybody inspected them like the first time that they came back? I'm not sure if we know that. Because are you just inviting like another theoretical accident to come into your port?
Right.
I don't like to be negative, but it is a question I would like to have answered.
It's definitely something to go follow up on. If it's no different than automobiles when you see a major issue or repair, and then then the OEM goes and has some type of claim or recall or something like that to go check and make sure that or put the fix in. I would be curious as to what the ship owners may have done for that.
Yeah, so the ship that was in earlier this week, Cezanne, was delivered in January 2015 with Dali following a March. The two were named together at the January delivery ceremony. So, they're sister ships, and there's typically a group of them, but the one that was in town this week was actually announced in a promo at the exact same time at the shipyard. And then we have another one. We have another ship that is actually owned by Maersk. The Maersk Shams comes in after Christmas, and another regular visitor.
Sure.
That keeps coming back. And I know we've talked about the crew of the Dali, and just randomly I came across this article from WMAR that 11 Dali crew members remain in Baltimore nearly 8 months after the bridge collapsed. And you and I had talked about that.
Right.
But there were some interesting bullets that I pulled out of this article that I'm not sure I knew all this stuff. I'm not sure that we knew all this stuff. More than 40 separate claims were filed in federal court against the ship owners, Grace, Ocean, and Synergy. Now, you and I dug some of this up. Well, you dug this stuff up for us, and you came up with.
There were 7 specifics but I didn't know that there was as many as 40. So I guess I have a lot more homework to do to go figure what those 40 are.
Yeah, and I don't know if we want to be tracking 40. I mean, we can, for the purposes of talking about it on the podcast and keeping people updated, I think it would be kind of interesting to know what the total number is, and maybe we'll keep an eye on
the major components,
the 10 most prominent ones, or the 10 most. I don't.
Especially and not to. I'm not trying to minimize any of the other ones, but there are some that are specifically tied to the federal legislation and funding that was just announced. So I do want to kind of track and see what's going on and what all is involved with that. So
So some other stuff from the article. Just how long the crew is expected to stay is unclear, but a schedule set by the judge has a deadline of July 16th for their dispositions.
Okay. So they're here at least until then.
Yeah. A few of them have been able to go home for family events and then come back, but majority of them have been here since March 26th, when the bridge accident happened. Now, I didn't know this. Synergy Marine put them up in hotels. So I knew that they were being held, if you will, but I'd imagined it was in a nice place, a hotel, an apartment, not anything close to a jail or anything like that.
Right.
But I had no idea that the company and Synergy Marine is who? They're the operator or the owner?
I believe they were the operator.
Okay, because I should know that, but I get those two companies mixed up. So, but they are putting them up in the hotel, so they are paying for that. And then remember, we talked about, was it last week that we talked about, maybe these people aren't even making. We talked about how hard life is for them, and how they send all their money home, and as soon as they send it home, it basically gets spent. So when they get to go home, they don't have any money to survive off of. They don't have any money to live on because the family is using money to live off of. And so they might get to go home for a little bit, but then they've got to go back out on the water to earn more money for the family, and they're never home.
Right.
But it says that they continue to pay their salaries. So I don't think I knew that either.
Yeah. I would imagine that during these times where there's clearly a focus, they have to go through the legal aspects, and those are clearly the people who are key in whatever the process is going to be. They have a due diligence to make sure that that their employees are taken care of, and as much as this is a very bad, difficult situation all around, let's try to do as best as we possibly can to make the situation livable.
Yeah, I guess I just think of you hear in the news everything's negative, right? So you hear all these kind of bad stories, and so it wouldn't have surprised me if the company wasn't supporting them,
right,
and wasn't putting them up. So to me, that's a two really interesting points that I don't think I knew. So right now the bench trial is scheduled for June of 2026, and that's only for phase 1 of the case, determining whether the ship owners can limit their liability for the collapse. So this is back when we go back to that law from 1850 or whatever,
right,
the limited liability. And then it says only then will the court start to consider all of the individual claims and determine how much the two companies owe to all the parties that filed claims.
All right. So but let's look at this just from the bridge aspect. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you can see that the court, it does take some time for legal issues to go through our court system. That's just the way that it operates and is designed. Mm-hmm. But if the bench trial just to determine whether the ship owners can limit their liability or not is not set until June of 26, and that's even before any of the other legal, financial, just with the bridge, not even the dispositions with the victims or small businesses or anything else is there. Just looking at just the bridge funding. We can't wait until June 2026 for all of the legal cases surrounding the bridge and the financial responsibility of that in order to start getting the bridge built.
Yes.
Why the federal government steps in to take care of their federal highway system and pay for it up front. And then the feds will go out and recoup all of that insurance money and legal money and everything like that. So, yes, the taxpayers are fronting the bill up front, but the taxpayers are going to get reimbursed in full through the legislation and through the insurance payments and the alike.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure that that's clear, that there's a tremendous amount of moving parts with this. Don't get so worked up about, oh, I got to pay for, a bridge across, halfway across the country that I don't ever drive over.
Yeah. Because in this legislation, right, is also disaster relief, right? So it's
yes, and I'll update here that in just in a
right,
couple of
because
minutes.
for us in Baltimore, it's a disaster.
Correct.
So, as taxpayers, we wind up paying for all kinds of things across the country that we don't necessarily utilize.
Correct.
We're paying road taxes for interstates across the country, and just
it's
the list is a mile long. It's always been that way.
Well, but it's also for the general good of national commerce. I mean, that's right. You look at the premise as to why the Eisenhower interstate system was built. It was to one, it was to help with the military actions coming out of World War II, but it's also to help domestic commerce. So it's extremely important.
Right, and back to your point, there's an awful lot of people on social media, freaking out. Why isn't this bridge built yet? And or why haven't they started to build it? And like you said, what about the money? And so here's the point. There's this limited liability law. They're not even going to have a court case about it till June of 26.
Yep.
We can't wait that long to get this built back up again. Yeah.
Why don't we skip to that while we're discussing it?
Okay.
Sure. From the Key Bridge perspective, last week I brought up, or in the last podcast I brought up, hey, we've got two bills out there, and I knew that December 20th was coming along for any type of funding authorizations and those types of things before Congress takes a break. Well, you saw this past week quite a bit of back and forth about our federal funding.
That was so frustrating, right? Because, we talked about it last week, and it was a really interesting thing where you had told us that the two bills from the House and the Senate were actually written the same way.
Correct.
Right? That's not normally how it happens. I mean, it seems awfully inefficient, but that's how our government works. They each come up with their own version, right? And then they have to write a new version. And that so the fact that they both had the same write-up, what I thought was incredibly hopeful, right? And so, and the funding for the Key Bridge was in there, right? So, okay, so this has been the whole thing because, President came here, the day or two after and said the federal government is going to provide for the funding and we're going to get this thing rebuilt. Well, that sounds great, but they really need to approve it in Congress. So it just doesn't happen because the president says it. They've got to go through, right? So then this week we hear, oh, this is great. They both have the same write-up and this will make things good. And so, yay, the original funding is the full funding is in there and it's probably going to happen. And then they reject it. It was like, oh. And then they rewrote it. Yay, and the funding's in, and and then a bunch of people in Congress are like, nah, we don't like that. Oh, now it's not. And then they rewrote it. Well, they rewrote it for the second time, the third version, right? And the whole time that they're going back and forth, you're wondering because, there's some posturing going on, and these people like this and these people like that. No, we don't like that, and we don't like this, and we're going to make you put this in. And you know what I mean? How it normally goes, they pack a bunch of stuff into a bill that kind of really doesn't belong. And so you're wondering and worrying, okay, is it really going to, the next version, is it going to have it in there? And so they rewrote it the second time, and the Key Bridge funding was in there. Yay! And then it finally went, finally got passed by the House, and it finally got passed by the Senate. And that was what, Friday night or Saturday night?
It was all. I think
so it was like this roller coaster of euphoria and disappointment, like 5 times. It was crazy.
So they
kind of drove me nuts.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. So you have some actual background about.
Yeah. So they were
freaking out.
They did put earlier in the week. You saw a number of pressers coming out from the federal legislators on both sides for Maryland, stating that, okay, the final version has got the funding in it. Everything's going to be okay. Everybody is agreeing to what the premise is. We're going to be okay. And so watching the count, last night, and then the bill getting signed into law, that solidifies everything. Here's what I don't. It includes this funding actually includes 2 important components for the Key Bridge, and I wanted to make sure that this was clear. So the first is the federal funding to rebuild the bridge, which is outlined in the Baltimore Bridge Act. This reimbursement for this will come from insurance policies and continued litigation. And so, I remember, last podcast we did talk about the 7 kind of major legislative or legal actions, that are slated for, going after the owner and the operators. But so that's one component. The second component is replenishment funding for the U.S. Department of Transportation Emergency Relief Fund. Okay, so we got some money out of this fund to work on the cleanup.
Oh,
so that there's money that got passed to replenish that. We're going to have to lean on that, apparently, that fund a little bit also for things that aren't covered in the Baltimore Bridge Act.
Okay.
So
yeah, I don't think I knew about that part, because this sounds awful similar to the one that, what was it, like $100 million?
Correct.
When we talked about weeks ago, the Coast Guard shows up and Army Corps of Engineers, and they all show up and they're spending all this money, and they had to pull money from other piles to be able to.
Correct.
Then there was a reimbursement for that also. So this is separate from that. This is
this is going to be separate. But look at it from this premise, though.
Mm-hmm.
And even in that example, when you have to deal with an unprecedented, unplanned situation, you're going to come across other costs that are incurred that you could not plan for. So I think that it's, yes, we know that there's probably a price tag for the bridge to be, whatever, something $1 billion, whatever. That's the price. However, as they do cleanup, as they do, any type of mitigation, or there's going to be other costs that come up. We're going to have to find a way to make sure that that's included also initially, to go and make sure that the full thing gets built and doesn't get delayed or stalled.
Gotcha. I was just talking about, there was a previous reimbursement, right? And then I was just wondering where the line is on this one, and what the 2 different ones were covering.
So I'm gonna look this week to see what that transition is between, because now that the spending bill has been approved, the overall federal spending bill, I don't know how that equates to, okay, now there's a green light, go ahead and start building the bridge tomorrow. But that, because now that, I'm sure that there was nobody there on Capitol Hill last night signing checks for the full amount, say, Key Bridge, payable to the Key Bridge, there you go. And then they start rolling cranes out tomorrow. I mean, I would love that would happen, but I know that that's not necessarily the case. So I'm curious to see what the time frame is and what some of the pressers and news releases and what some of the plans are now that we have the funding secured.
Right. And then there's a whole bunch more to it, right? Because typically federal government covers 90% of an event such as this. Right? That's what I've heard. And so I've heard we're really going after 10. We talked about it as it was 100, but really we were going after that 10. And so, but right now, so the demo should start soon. We don't know anything more about that yet. That should start soon, of bringing down the old bridge sections. And they are working the design part of it.
Correct.
But, and so how does the 90 separate from the 10, separate from the demo with the design and then the build, and, how all that works, and when do you get the green light based on the, gosh, it seems like an awful lot of interlocking parts. So it's not just, red and green or black and white, go or no go. It seems like an awful lot of stuff.
Which is also another benefit of using that progressive build design, where you can match all of these different components all together at once, and you don't have to rely on some other part of the process. Everybody can start moving forward at the same time.
Right.
Something else here locally that we need to kind of keep an eye on over the next 2 to 3 weeks. January 15th is going to come very quickly. So if you've been watching any of the discussions coming out of the USMX and ILA labor agreement, there's still a component that they have not agreed upon. It's on this technology and automation concern. If you have not listened to Sal's podcast, the one that he does a video overlay with, what's the guy from 60 Minutes? The one that you and I watched, where he talks about both sides of what technology and automation is, and what is some of the beef on both sides.
John Stossel?
Yes, that's it. Yes. And it was very, very interesting. It gave me some different thought points or perspectives from both sides, as to what the labor union side is really looking at, and that I can understand where there's some concerns from the fully automated and fully autonomous terminal operations, and what some of them what are really some of the issues. One of the things that Sal said was, he was talking about the ship to shore cranes, and those ship to shore cranes that move those containers from the ship to the terminal. They can be automated, but and this is what I really appreciate. He goes, quite honestly, the person operating it is doing that particular movement just as fast, or probably faster, than the automated process like that. And then in that case, it does make sense to have, union labor in there operating those cranes.
Right.
So he kind of broke down kind of a lot of the different positions of, okay, this probably could benefit from some technology and automation support. And then in this area, no, the labor needs to stay there. Probably need more labor, to address that. So I appreciated his holistic approach, and I really hope that they can come up with that understanding of the differences in terminology of technology, automation, semi-automation, autonomous vehicles versus the use of technology to improve processes and keep everybody safe and increase the the labor pool because of it.
Yeah, because Sal like took the word technology and automation and unpacked those and differentiated between the two.
Yes.
And then he talked about most of these terminals that are like fully automated are brand new.
Correct. Yes.
And they're designed for this, So he was talking about the money that it would take to redesign a terminal that's currently working, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about how, so many of these terminals on the East Coast are small. Even the terminals on the East Coast are different from the ones in the West Coast in how they actually operate, and how some of the overseas terminals are just so monstrous, because they've designed them to be automated. So to apply full automation at U.S. ports might not be something that's even realistic.
Correct. And so at that
It
point,
was
in listening to that, I was like, you're almost arguing a point that doesn't even exist at this,
right, right,
But I mean, I understand all of that. I don't think we should go backwards
right.
in that. But is there a way to incorporate both? And I really do believe that there is a way to, to utilize technology effectively,
Mm-hmm.
which will also help with labor related issues, but also increase the labor pool in the labor market.
Right, because let's face it, in little old Baltimore here, we're kind of landlocked. So if we can find a way to make things more efficient, and get more containers into that same spot somehow, or more throughput, which is the thing we brought up last week, because Jonathan Daniels said, and I think this is what he meant, an additional 1,000 truck transactions per day.
Right.
Because that's what they track it by per day. So when he said now the 1,000, I think he meant per day, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. They, have that ability to process that many more. It's like
Right.
it's almost 25 or 30% increase, and that they're able to handle that. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you want to go back and talk about the ship from last week?
Yes.
So yeah, let's take a look at. So we did get some new pictures that were.
This is on the RoRo Ship, the Morning Menad, right?
Yes, this is a look at the bow section where it hit the actual corner of Dundalk Marine Terminal and caused some damage. Now, if you zoom in here, I mean, that looks like a break, like a hole.
Yeah.
So you can't have that. So this was interesting. So this is supposedly a picture of them actually welding it shut from the inside.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Huh. And that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we watch all this stuff on the live stream camera that we have set up that watches the ships come back and forth from the port. But a lot of times when they're doing these repairs, they're 4 miles away. That's how far the camera is. So you're not really getting any kind of detailed look at what's happening.
Sure.
Unless someone was up close and shared a photograph, which we're glad they did. All right, so one of the camera operators caught the video of the ship coming in. So let's see if we can take a look at that.
Okay. So what you're seeing here is so this is from the live stream camera, and it's sped up about
I think this is two times
or so. So it looks like it's just cranking through the harbor.
Let me slow it down a little bit, get back to kind of normal here. But what I want you to notice as they kind of zoom out here a little bit, take a look at the water. Let me see if I can move it up just a little bit and zoom out. So, there's some white caps and it's windy, but it's not. You'll notice, oh, there's the pilot boat. That's cool. There's a pilot boat coming to retrieve the bay pilot from the ship. But and so this is only 2 minutes. If we go back, I'll just rewind it back real quick. To me, it looks like the wind has picked up significantly when you go back here to like this 2-minute mark.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's hard to see because we're not zoomed out.
That's important to note because weather conditions can change at any moment. I mean, you can plan for the best situation and stuff can just happen.
Right. And I think that's exactly what happened. So if we she's coming through the Key Bridge, and not just because it's a long video, we have like a 30-minute video here. So here we are. The tugs have engaged with the ship. So it's probably at about where, and if you look real closely up here on top, can you see these people walking?
Yeah, the earlier shot had a close up.
Right. So that's probably the pilots working their way up to the front of the ship because they actually have to walk up there. It's quite a long process, but so you can start to see some of the wave action here, like as it hits the front of the tug, as the tug is attached to the ship, or as it's trying to steer the ship. Right. And let's fast forward a little bit more here. So right about here, and they'll start to make the turn into the channel. So now you can see 2 tugs like we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see like the water is even more active than it was. So in the video, 16 minutes have gone by. Now I fast forwarded that much, and you can see the water's a bit more active than it was just a few moments ago.
Yep.
Right. And then you can start to see it's barely making the turn into the channel, the first channel that's going to lead it up to Dundalk Marine Terminal. And there's 2 different ones. It can take the far channel, which is the furthest one from Seagirt, if you will, but it's the first one that they come to, because this ship goes kind of on the back end of Dundalk Marine Terminal, or closest to the Key Bridge. And then if the ships are going closer to Seagirt, they'll go further down the main channel and then take a second entrance in, which is, by the way, the same one that the container ships use. So here she is making the turn. And then let's fast forward some more. And so they're going down this channel. And so, let me back it up a little bit. So right about in here somewhere, so I wish I could draw that. I had the drawings last week. So the terminal is here and the ship is coming in at an angle like this. And if you watch the video, you can start to see it turn a bit. Yep. So what they want to do is they want to bring it in, because the channel is only around the terminal. It's not, so
it doesn't extend out any further.
Right. So they need to bring it in kind of close to this corner and then spin it like this. And then, so the corner, I'm using my hands. It's kind of crazy. So there's a side like this, and then there's this far side. So they bring the ship in, spin it around, and then back it down this way. So you can see they're starting to spin it here.
Looks like they're trying to spin it up against the current, and it's just all it's doing is pushing.
But it looks like they're not able to spin it. It looks like it's kind of getting away from them, which, can you imagine being one of these? You're the pilot on the ship, or you're one of these tugboat guys, and now you realize that maybe the ship is getting away from us. Not a good feeling.
You can almost see the difference between what they're trying to do and push versus what the wind is pushed. Like, two different efforts there.
Yeah. Okay, so now they're starting to get it spun a little bit. Right, you can start to see the stern end go in a little bit, like they're starting to make progress, because they've got to get the stern. You want to see the whole side of this, the port side of this ship, and not see any of the stern as they back it down.
Right.
You
can't get it spun around.
Right. It's really difficult. So
it looks like they're having to back and push the turn backwards all at the same time.
Right. So they come in and then they spin the ship like it's like 180, 150, 120 or 150 degrees, and then back it down the side. So just for effect, let me speed this up a little bit to 2 times. And so to me, and now look, the bow is taking off.
Yeah,
so the bow is spinning around, which is not supposed to happen here. The stern is supposed to spin around. So you're supposed to be seeing less of the stern, not more, because it's supposed to be spinning in the opposite way.
It's supposed to be putting its back end into the...
Right. And I think because this is such a giant sail and the wind was hitting it at like this angle, this could not have been a good feeling here. And here shortly, let's just keep watching. So you can see they're just struggling to...
It almost
what I would imagine. I'm not a tug guy. I have mad respect for these people, but it looks like they're just trying to get control of this thing.
And you'd say, well, wait, what shouldn't you send a tug around the other side to try to push up against? But that's not
right. But I think they only ordered 2, and then hey, where is, and then who makes a call for? Oh my gosh, we need a 3rd or a 4th one, and how long does it take those guys to get that thing started up? How far away it is? How fast can they hightail it over here? And now it's starting to spin back the other way. Watch. There's a little bit of a lean to it.
Yeah, and it is leaning quite a bit from the wind pressure.
Yeah.
Wind blowing.
And then boom.
Boom. Yeah, you see it completely stop. I wonder what that felt like.
And kind of lean
in. So that's the point that it hit.
Yeah. Kind of wild to have this video. So big ups to K-Lox, one of our volunteer career camera operators, for grabbing this video off of the Stream Time Live camera. Yeah. So kind of crazy. And then I think, okay, well, the stern is grounded. Let's just go ahead and let her spin around, because
let it sit there for until we
probably don't have a choice.
Right.
And then as the wind gets more of the sail surface, of the freeboard of the side, then, oh my gosh, then the wind is, I would imagine, just taking over.
Yeah. We're lucky it wasn't worse.
Oh my God, very lucky. And I think it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah. I think that goes back to how well those tug operators and the pilots, and they're all, it's a
Absolutely.
really, really difficult situation to try to navigate. No pun intended there, but that's
Right. Well, then I don't know. But I would imagine that maybe one of the thought processes might have been, okay, well, let's not have this thing crash into cement. Everybody knows that the bottom of the Chesapeake is basically mud.
mm-hmm.
If it's leaning on the mud edge of the channel,
That's going to be.
I mean, there could be a lot worse things that could happen.
Sure.
Yeah. So that was, and it keeps going, but yeah, that's probably.
That's a cool video shot there from the
Yeah,
camera.
it was really interesting to be able to see that.
All right.
What else do we have? We reordered some stuff, so I'm like, where are we?
Yeah, no, that's no. So we got some upcoming events. I think we're kind of wrapped up for all of the December port related events.
Yeah.
But coming up in January, the Women's Traffic and Transportation Club of Baltimore, January the 15th, they have their dinner meeting at Michael's Cafe in Middle River.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Daniels is going to give a state of the port address at that meeting. You can
Now,
visit.
can I stop you right here?
Yeah.
Because I just thought of something. How interesting is it that date coordinates with the ILA date, right? Isn't that the same date?
Sure is.
And Jonathan said he would speak on that date.
Maybe in the
which
morning.
is going to be in the evening.
Yeah, it will be in the evening. Yeah.
What do you think he'll have an update, or
might be worth paying the ticket? All right.
That's interesting. We've been talking about this for weeks, and we've known that this event is on our calendar here.
Yeah.
And I just put that together. Oh my gosh, he's this is a really, I wanted to go just to hear Jonathan speak because like I said, I mean he's a very interesting speaker. He has a lot of passion for his work. And so I wanted to go to that anyway, but now there might be some really big news.
Be curious to see him. Go ahead and buy your tickets now while you can.
Right.
They'll go, well, I don't understand why there's so popular this
yeah
month.
Yeah.
WTTCbaltimore.com is where you can look at that.
Oh, thanks.
And then also Friday, January the 17th is the Baltimore Port Alliance general meeting at the pilot's office. That'll also probably be a
2 days after. So, wow.
Oh, history from the Port of Baltimore history segment here on December the 24th, 1852. So going way back, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad became the first rail line to reach the Ohio River from the eastern seaboard. So on Christmas Eve, 1852, the last spike was driven into the rail line. The event occurred at Rossby's Rock near Moundsville in Ohio. So that the biggest this spike driving ceremony up there you go. Yeah, there's your.
I decided to go and find it real quick.
Yeah, so the actual spot is marked by a makeshift monument, and so you can go out there and visit that if you so wish. But this was really the critical component during that time for the success of the Port of Baltimore, using the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad to get to the Ohio Valley, and that's been our driver here, one of our biggest assets or drivers of the Port of Baltimore. Eventually, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad has become part of CSX transportation. And so that's an important date in history, December the 24th. That last spike was driven in, and they had a big celebration and ceremony for that. So,
and then I think that rock is pretty big.
Yes,
because that sign was probably, I don't know, 10, 15 feet tall by what, 25 feet? And so that's an awful lot of chipping and hammering in the 1800s.
Yep.
So I'm sure that was a really big deal back then. And so it would be interesting I'm sure some historian knows how long it took them
to make the sign.
And then did they plan it? Did they plan that it would be there? In other words, it's going to take us weeks to engrave this rock. Let's pick a place and just say we met there.
Exactly.
Or plan to meet there. Or did they meet there and then spent like the next month doing the engraving?
This is kind of the similar conversation I've had about the Francis Scott Key buoy.
Oh. Yeah, and there are some folks with, I think it's the Dundalk Historical Society that can.
Yeah. So I understand that argument. Sure.
Yeah, that can talk about those details. As a matter of fact, I met one of them met some of those people at the WTTC dinner where I spoke and talked about the port and did a presentation. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's all I've got for this week.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's enough. So as we talk about, we are Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers. We're all over the place in socials. We have about 16,000 people on a Facebook group. Lots of details and photos and information about the port and the port happenings. We have a website, BaltimoreShipwatchers.com, which has a link to this podcast, a link to our swag sale. So we sell T-shirts like this one, coffee cups, hats, even calendars. And we sold so many calendars this past week, I had to go out and order another 30.
Oh, cool.
And 20 of those are sold out. So I know because it's getting close to the end of the year, so people won't be thinking about calendars much anymore. But if you would like one, don't hesitate to place an order. So you go to BaltimoreShipwatchers.com, go to what is the name of the tab?
Merchandise?
It's a merch tab. And then down on there are you can pay by Venmo or PayPal to order a calendar. And there's also ship schedules, a lot of other information, a link to the live stream web camera. We're on Instagram, Twix, shout out Amy Lawrence. We've even started on Reddit and Threads. So we're getting around the social media circles. But and if you have any, and obviously I'm a little not feeling so great this morning, but anyway, and if you have any podcast ideas, suggestions, you want to throw Rotten Tomatoes because it sucks, Mike at BaltimoreShipwatchers.com.
Sounds good. And listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for the audio version of this.
And if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, or hit the bell to be alerted to new podcasts as they come available.
Absolutely. All righty.
All right. That's about it.
We'll go ahead and carry us out. 3, 2, 1. Happy
ship watching.
All right, everybody, have a good holiday, and we'll see you next time.
Have a great holiday, everyone. Thanks for watching.